Welcome to Checks and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair, and today we're going to tell you how to survive 7% interest rates.
Michael, how are you doing this morning?
Winnie's back in power. Interest rates are on the way down, and we've just had a mano for breakfast, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the general sentiment at the moment, that we've been through a tough time. You know, at the start of the year, we did the podcast on how to survive the recession.
Yep.
A few months ago, don't mean to brag, but your boys did an episode on the bottom of the market.
And what do we think was happening a few months ago? The bottom of the market.
Yeah, that's right. So you look at that, there's a change of government, which obviously there's been a push along those lines. A lot of people are happy about where that's at.
Yeah.
And then you go, Mike, it's all good times. We're heading into summer. But I'm having some conversations at the moment, and it doesn't feel like good times for a lot of people.
No, it doesn't. And it's a really interesting kind of, the way that humans operate with their money and their attitude towards what they're going to do with it is really interesting, because we're starting to see not just a sentiment shift with our customers, but also an activity shift with our customers, where people are starting to not just say, I want to buy a house now, I want to buy a house in the next 6 months, to I've just bought a house, I need the money. So, there is signs that the market is picking up again and people are perhaps feeling a little bit wealthier. However, fundamentally, interest rates are still very high for a lot of people. So although you might feel wealthier, the budget suggests otherwise.
And there are, you might say they're lucky. They're now probably starting to feel unlucky. Some people still on quite low interest rates, where interest rates started to increase quite a long time ago. Feels like a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
Being like 2%.
I know.
Oh, sometimes I'll bring up some projections and I'll see 2%. I'll be like, oh, my stars and stripes.
Yeah. Look, it's for everyone who fixed long when the rates were low, good call, good play, good call.
But those people, Ravi's
patting himself on the back. Yeah.
On behalf of all of New Zealand, Ravi, F you.
Yeah.
But so there is that sentiment at the moment that 2024 might be a bit better. There's some kind of winds of change happening. But Mike, if we look at it, 7% interest rates are still triple what they were at the bottom of the market. You've got a cost of living crisis. You've got inflation still at 6% and coming down, but it takes a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that is a really good point, is that the Reserve Bank of New Zealand will continue to focus on inflation over basically everything else. And while inflation remains high, they will continue to try and hold interest rates high as well to try and drop that inflation.
Yeah.
So if people start, and here's a real danger, if people start to feel wealthier in the short term and inflation hasn't come down, and they start spending a bit more on that consumer debt because they feel like they're going to get, in the future they will be able to pay it off, which is what sentiment is, interest rates may stay higher for longer. So, everybody out there, watch your spending still. Make sure you got that budget. Don't just go out and blow it all on jet skis and spa pools and McLarens. Make sure you go in signature class Toyota, a secondhand jet ski, maybe just a plunge pool instead of a spa.
I tell you what, nothing more responsible than a secondhand jet ski. So they're still paying out there. And I've been having some of these conversations recently where they really have sucked. You're talking to people who are very stressed about their own situation. They can see when they're rolling off rates going, this isn't going to be a lot of fun. So this episode is for those Kiwis who are losing sleep at night. Really all our friends around the world. Bonjour for those who are watching in Paris. Is anybody watching in Paris?
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, 1% of the audience.
Yeah.
Now, this is for those who are losing sleep at night with high interest rates and can roll onto high interest rates and are thinking, I don't know how I'm going to make the new payment. And I've certainly spoken to some people who are worried about losing their home. So we're going to break down a really clear plan of what you can do, because my view is when you are stressed about money, when you're stressed about anything really, and you're losing sleep at night, it's really, you don't have a good plan. So there's always levers that you can pull. There's always things you can do. So we're going to talk about all the options. And if you are one of those people, a few different things. One, please go talk to somebody. Do not just internalize it and go, I'm screwed, I'm not going to deal with this. Get out, talk to Mike, talk to a mortgage broker if you're already dealing with one, and come up with a plan, because there's nothing worse than being stressed and not going, what actions am I going to take?
Yeah, and money stress is real stress. And, I don't have the stats to hand, but I would say that it kind of represents a significant portion of the reason that relationships break down, the reason that people start to get into depression. Money stress is real stress. You should be talking to someone about it and coming up with a plan.
Yeah. So I want to go through an example first just to bring this home, and then we're going to kind of break through where to go. So I recently spoke to a client, but I've spoken to quite a few clients in this situation recently. One household income, 3 kids under 5, and a little bit over $1 million mortgage. They're at a 3% interest rate at the moment. Now, they are breaking even on a 3% interest rate with their budget and mortgage repayments of about $5,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, their mortgage is going to roll off in around September next year, and they're expecting their repayments to jump to $7,700 a month, which is an extra $2,700 a month, Mike.
Yeah, that is a crazy amount of money to find, especially when you got kids.
Yeah. So that's not a unique situation. I'm talking to people who are going, I can see what's happening. I can see the abyss ahead, and I'm not looking forward to walking towards it. And a lot going, I don't want to lose my home, which is, I tell you what, when anybody says something like that to me, just my heart sinks.
Yeah, and it's not everyone is in these situations for the same reason. Some people have gone and bought 3 houses at the top of the market. Now they have to settle them, and it's all come home to roost. We're seeing quite a bit of that at the moment too.
Some of these investment properties.
Yeah, like negative 85K per annum in cash flow. So good luck.
Need a lot of capital gains.
Yeah,
to make that
good
up.
luck. Good luck funding that one. Or it's simply just that, because of what the housing market was doing in 2020, 2021, 2019 as well, really, you had no choice but to buy at those prices. There really wasn't anything else you could do unless you just wanted to stay out of the market again. And that didn't look like a sensible suggestion either.
Yeah.
So, people are in these situations for different reasons, but it's the same levers you can pull to try and get through it.
So, Mike, let me ask you a question, because I know there'll be people thinking, how did you take on $1 million of debt and plan your life at 3% interest rates? Why did people take on that much debt? Because it's not just one person. There's lots and lots of people in this situation, and now they're struggling. Why didn't people plan their lives off 6 or 7% interest rates?
Yeah, there's a few reasons for that, right? The first one is not people's financial literacy isn't perhaps where it should be. So for a lot of people, when they go to the bank and say, "Oh, look, interest rates are 3%," if it's your first home, you probably haven't been tracking mortgage interest rates for the last 20 years to know what are you
doing for fun? Like, what do you do on the weekends if you're not tracking long-term interest rate assumptions?
Not looking at those 10-year swap rates compared to the 1-year yield curve.
Was very funny the other day when you're like, "Ooh, James, look at that yield curve."
Yield curves flattening out again, yeah. But, people haven't been tracking this. And the advice that you get, unless you have a financial advisor, the advice that you get from people often isn't, if you're looking at buying a house, from your uncle at the barbecue, it's not like, "Oh, James, it's, go buy a house. You should buy a house now. Great time to buy a house." Not, "Oh, look, mate, have you perhaps thought about, maybe what that'll cost you in 2 or 3 years' time if inflation rises, and maybe we should stress test these a little bit?"
Does sound like a smart uncle.
Yeah. But I don't have an uncle like that. But we're probably not thinking about those things when you buy a house. The second thing is, like I sort of alluded to before, in 2019, actually, to be honest, for the last 8 years, before it was probably the bull run before the post-COVID crash.
Baby, come back.
If someone's saying to you, "Oh, look, now's probably a bit overinflated, the market's a bit hot, maybe you should think about the amount of debt you're taking on," you're probably thinking, "Well, actually, for the last 8 years, it's been going pretty strong. And everyone's been saying the bubble's got to burst at some point, and we're a long way into this thing." So the other option of staying out of the market isn't really viable either. And then the more expensive the house, generally, the better you will be in the long term, right? Because it's in a better location. You'll probably get better capital gains. It'll be a nicer house. So, it's easy for people to fall into that trap at the top of the market and, in the bottom of the market as well, I guess. It's just that, unfortunately, it was going to be the mother of all bubble pops in terms of interest rates because of how much inflation there was in the economy and the debt to income ratios that are now in play.
Things are so obvious in
Oh,
hindsight.
that was a
aren't they?
long ramble from me, wasn't
Yeah.
it? I'm sort of surprised Ravi wasn't like, keep it going,
Yeah,
mate.
yeah. No, Rob fell asleep behind that.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. It was good. And you bang on in terms of essentially the summary of that is people just do stuff without really thinking about it, right?
Yeah, and most of the time it pays off.
I mean, I don't want to talk about the way you live your life, but just do stuff.
Most of the time it pays off.
So we've got like a few steps that we want to talk through in terms of if you are in this situation, if you know somebody who is struggling and going, I'm worried about my interest rates, we've got a 4-step plan, I'm going to say. So step 1 is around dealing with the emotion. Mike, maybe not where people thought we would start, but if you are, I mean, as soon as I hear losing sleep at night, my concern is people aren't going to think about, use their brain. They're going to use their heart. They're going to be emotional. They're going to think about how can I get out of this situation as quickly as we can. So we need to get away from dealing with the emotion, don't we?
Yeah, and a really good way to do that is to put a plan in place. Have a chat to a financial advisor, someone that is independent of your life. If you talk to your brother, uncle, sister, friend, they all have some type of bias as to the advice they're going to be giving you. A financial advisor will give you advice based on facts, experience, and it should be pretty impartial in terms of products as well.
Yeah, so we're going to actually talk about the steps you can go through, but in terms of the emotion side, really good, very old school, really good way to start with it. Piece of paper. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And what can I do to try and improve it? Yeah. I guarantee even just writing something down on paper is a really good place to start. But as soon as people losing sleep at night about losing their homes, it's just horrible. It really does break my heart to hear that. But like Mike said, start putting a plan in place. The obvious place to start, which nobody wants to hear about, but if we are talking about, in the example I gave before, pretty much a 50% jump in mortgage repayments, is we have to look at the budget.
Yeah.
And we've got to look at it completely differently to when we were sitting at 2% interest rates. So at 2% interest rates, we're having a hell of a lot of fun. Our repayments are low. We've got far more discretionary income, but the Reserve Bank of New Zealand has intentionally made your life horrible. F you, Adrian Orr. We are all feeling the pinch because of you, but he's done exactly what he's meant to do. But now interest rates are high, exactly what the Reserve Bank wants. We're looking around and going, instead of 30% of our income going to mortgage repayments, it's now 50, 60%, right?
Yeah, and I think in terms of your budget, and for everyone who's sitting there thinking, these guys bang on about budgets all the time, have you put a budget in place? Probably not. So look, just go do it. Even if you're not struggling with 7%, a budget's going to help you over the long term.
Yeah.
But really important point there is, we've broken this down 1,000 times. You've just got to start. Fixed expenses. What do you need to run your life, pay the bills, pay the mortgage, and then everything else works out from there.
Yeah, and if you're stressed about money and losing sleep at night and you haven't gone through your last 3 months of transactions and put a budget in place on kind of the bare minimums, then, you're not taking this as seriously as you need to. This is where you need to look at cut back. One of the points later on is this isn't going to last forever, and really, really focus on what can I look to cut.
Yeah.
Mike, step 3 is all about you. It's the levers you can pull. And I'm sure you've had 1,000 conversations over the past 12, 18 months about what are my options. So, Mike, I'm worried about my mortgage repayments going up and I don't think I can pay them. What can I do?
Yeah, cool. So there's a few different things you can do. The first one is to cut expenses. Now, if you're saying to me, hey, Mike, I've done my budget and that fixed expense jar, that's basically all of it. A little one you can do is just to pause your KiwiSaver contributions. So if they're at 8%, first of all, pull them back to 3%. If they're at 3% and you still need the cash, you can pause those KiwiSaver contributions. I do not recommend doing this over the long term, but as a short-term plug until the interest rates come back down, it is something that could be beneficial, because at the end of the day, selling your house at the bottom of the market and crystallizing that loss in terms of putting your retirement savings on pause for a little bit, I would say is the better outcome in the short and the long term. Yeah,
depending on your employer, you're probably you're taking essentially a 3% pay cut if you go on a KiwiSaver contribution holiday. But if you earn $100,000 a year, you're getting an extra $300 a month in the pocket. So that's good. So KiwiSaver is an option. What are our other options?
Cool. Second one is, how do I increase that income? Well, If you can, if you've got the space and if your family kind of makeup composition allows it, you could get a boarder in or a flatmate. $250 a week, it's about $1,000 a month if my math serves me right. And that'll take away quite a bit of that jump in the repayments. Now, there's ways you can probably extrapolate out from the boarder, right? You could get 2 flatmates. You could actually shift out and go renting if it makes more sense and rent your house out. You could move into your parents' place if you really had to and rent your house out. Only things you just got to be careful of there are the tax implications around that. If you're switching your house to be an investment property, I'd say just have a quick chat to an accountant before you do it. But at the end of the day, if you got to do it, you got to do it. And hey, maybe mum and dad live in the 7-bedroom family home down the line somewhere, and you can just shift in there and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. International students, another option instead of a boarder. The other piece is obviously looking at your salary and going, am I being fairly paid in the market? Should I be looking at getting my CV out there, maybe job hopping?
Yeah.
If we've got 2 people in the household that can be working and maybe one's working at the moment, can the second one go and get a minimum wage job working around the kids?
Yeah.
Now, that might hurt the ego. That might not be a lot of fun, but it actually can add, even like a minimum wage job, can add quite a bit of additional cash to the household.
Oh, yeah. Like if you think 30K, 40K coming into the household per year, even 20K, you're covering a fairly significant portion of those interest cost increases. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, let's talk about the mortgage side. What can we do on the mortgage side?
All right. So this is all going to depend on how bad the cash crunch is. But generally speaking, first thing you can do is look at the loan term. So you can look at kicking the loan term back out to 30 years. That will reduce the minimum repayment. You will still be paying off principal. So I guess it is more favorable to some other options. But you do need to look out for the fact that this will be a full application. So when you go to the bank and say, hey, can I push my loan term, which is 20 years left on these loans, out to 30 years, you are increasing the risk to the bank. So the bank will say to you, I want you to prove to me that you can pay that off over 30 years and the bank's not going to be left holding the bag.
Yeah. So what does increasing the loan term mean? Like, so going from 20 years to 30 years, why does that reduce the repayments?
Yeah. So the way that loan repayments are calculated is the minimum loan repayment is how much you will need to pay this loan off over the loan term, right? And for most people, when they start out getting a loan, that will be 30 years. That is the maximum loan term, generally speaking, that you can do in New Zealand for a retail mortgage. Over time, that loan term will shrink with how long you've been paying it off. So if you've been paying it off for 10 years, you'll have 20 years left on that loan term. If you push it back out to 30 years, your minimum repayments should decrease by about a third again. So that is one way to decrease the minimum repayment that you make without actually stopping paying principal off the loan. So it is a full application. So if you are going to do it and you're struggling, you want to do it sooner rather than later, because if you are in financial hardship, very difficult for a bank to do this.
That's a really good shout. So why is it easier to talk to a bank before you've run into the hardship opposed to like you help?
Oh, my days. Look, so there are, and I'll keep running through them, but there are a lot of different things bankers can do when customers aren't in hardship to try and improve that cash flow situation. We just talked about extending the loan term. We can put it on interest only, which I'll touch on shortly as well. You can do half the loan on interest only. You can put some of it on revolving credit. Like, there's just a lot of different things you can do. However, all of this requires the bank to be able to say to whoever audits them or to their internal credit teams, this person can afford to do this and they can pay it off over time. If you are in hardship, if you have missed a loan repayment, if you are late on a loan repayment, if someone has lost their job and all of a sudden the income is halved, you're probably going to be in a hardship situation very quickly. And a bank has significantly less options because it's not obvious to them that you can afford what you've got now. So changing it may put you in a worse situation. So again, act early and do it as quickly as you can. Speak to a bank, speak to a mortgage broker. If you have missed some repayments or you are a little bit late, not the end of the world. There are things that you can do. Most banks have a kind of mortgage relationship unit where they have a certain set of tools and tasks that they can kind of run through to help you out.
The other bit is, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if you guys know this, but the banks aren't that liked in New Zealand. So kicking people out of their homes, probably ain't going to be good for the brand. So they want to try to work with people to make sure that they can stay in their home.
Yeah, they do. And at the end of the day, when a bank has to sell a mortgage through the PLA, sell a house through the PLA process.
What the hell's the
PLA process? It's just a bank foreclosing on your house, effectively saying, you're not paying this loan back. I'm going to sell the underlying security, which I have a mortgage over, to repay the loan. And the banks do have a responsibility to try and get the most amount of money. But banks aren't real estate agents. They're not in the business of selling houses. They just want their money back. Yep. It's more hassle than trying money. Exactly. It's more hassle than just trying to get someone to actually make the repayment.
I don't mean to take the piss out of you, but do you know what PLA stands for?
Isn't it property? I do know this. No, I do know this.
Ravi, he doesn't know what it stands for.
It's
all right. You can think about it and No, we're not saying an awkward pause while you try and think.
Just the spinning wheel.
Yeah. I guarantity the next time.
Property Law Act, I think. Yeah. Oh, my days. This is so frustrating.
Oh, my days. The other thing I get asked from time to time is because interest only.
It is Property Law Act.
Ravi, do not help him like that.
I knew it was Property Law Act.
I'm not angry with you, Ravi. I'm just disappointed. My dad said to me for 32 years.
You've got a debt? What's that like?
The other thing I get asked all the time, so going on interest only for say 12 months is essentially a form of financial hardship application.
I don't know
okay,
that.
let me finish. Okay. Yeah. So essentially some form of I'm struggling financially. Does that, some people worry it has a long-term impact on your reputation with the bank and might impact future lending? What do you think?
Okay, well, those are two different questions. Does it have an impact on your relationship with the bank? No. Does it have an impact on future lending? Sometimes, if you haven't readjusted the repayment term afterwards, because the minimum repayment will be higher. So, yep, nah. To answer your question without getting into it, no, it doesn't. It's fine. And I think probably the really key thing to think about here with an interest-only application is, let's say that those repayments were $7,700 a month.
Going to, yeah.
Yep. So if you were on interest only, that'd be about $5,800 per month.
Yep.
So you can really see the difference that makes in terms of the cash flow in the household. You're pretty close to, you're much closer to those original repayments.
Yeah, and then once you look to start to pull back on the budget. Yep. I mean, the big thing in terms of the levers to pull is if you're struggling with your mortgage repayments, you're not going to be the expert. You need to go and talk to somebody. Go, here is my situation. Please fix it. Yeah. Essentially, that's what people come to you to do, right?
Yeah, they do. And to be honest, a lot of brokers won't like taking on these situations because you generally open yourself up for quite a bit of risk for not a lot of reward. But a good broker or the broker who put the loans in place for you should actually be like, I have to offer advice in this situation and I'm going to do it for you.
Because you gave them the debt at the 3% interest rate, Michael. You have to take responsibility for your action. Let's keep it moving. The last point I want to talk about is giving some context to this all. So when we go through, and it's the same with the share market, the last 18 months, you roll back to the GFC, you roll back to 2001, you roll back to 1987, we forget that bad times don't last. Bad people do. We forget that bad times...
I'll take you through PLA.
Whatever the hell that means. We forget bad times don't last, just like good times don't last. And it's important to remember that if you're thinking, I'm screwed, this is never going to get better, it will get better. If you put this into context of where interest rates have sat long term, they haven't historically sat at 7%. They haven't historically sit at 2%. They're going to sit somewhere in the middle long term. Inflation will come back down. And it's just important that you think, realistically, the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, and I think it's also important to, yes, they will come down the next 12 to 18 months. By how much, we don't really know, but they will start to come down. And the other thing with the context is it's important to realize that, it's not just you going through this. I know this might be a bit inspirational, whatever.
If you believe, you can achieve.
But if you really want to look at a prime example of what kind of being in the crap really looks like and how someone dealt with it, our podcast episode with Ilsa Wolf on when she was kind of going back 55,000 a year, had a couple of kids, and was like, holy crap, I need to fix this. Sat down, made a spreadsheet, and just started controlling the things that she could, right? Changing the insurance, going out and shopping to see if it could be cheaper, seeing if there was a better interest rate out there in the market for you. Putting your head in the sand is not the answer to these things. You've got to take control of it and try and change it.
It's the most common approach, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. We're going to break the fourth wall here, Mike, because we're actually filming during the All Blacks Island game, 25-24 to the All Blacks at the moment.
Whoa.
So let's wrap it up and watch the end of the game. Hopefully you'll know what happened. Hopefully it's good news at the end of it. While we're here giving you our time while the All Blacks are playing, please give us a subscribe, a review, and a like. And if you've got somebody who is in a situation where they are stressed and you know it, share this episode so they can put their own plan in place. Thank you very much. We will catch you next time.
Property Law Act. Cheers.